Morena everybody, na mihi o te aha, sorry, I'm losing my rhythm. Na mihi o te ahu rā, kia koutou tēnei ki te whakanui e te kaupapa nui tēnā koutou katoa. So welcome everybody to the Climate Committee, the last of the term. So we have two colleagues online, and Councillor Wolfe and Councillor Duffy, and Councillor Kirkbinand is obviously dealing with something even more urgent than climate. Yes, so could I invite Councillor Saw to...
Did I karakia?
Yeah, thank you.
Tātou. Tukua te wairua kia rere. Tukua te mauri ka oho. Ruruku kia ranginui, ruruku kia papatuanuku. Ko tēnei te rangi ka u. Ko tēnei te rangi ka mau. Ko tēnei te rangi ka ruruku. Ko ienei tauira o te whenua ki te rangi i te taio ki te arorangi ki rukutia noa atu. Tuturu o te whiti whakamaua kia tina. Tina homi e, hui e, tai ki e.
Oh, kia ora, thank you. So we're about to do apologies, so Councillor Ponto, quickly sit down and then you're here. So apologies from anybody? No, so obviously, yeah, we'll just leave Councillor Cook. Conflicts of interest, anybody? Nope. Okay. Public participation? None. And now item number 4, confirmation of the minutes from the 27th of March. Is everybody happy with that? What we've got there? Thank you. Moved by Councillor Staples, seconded by Councillor Saw. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against, the motion is carried. Thank you very much. So, rolling on to item number 5. And we've got the team coming up, or just team leader? Boom. Hi Jake, how are you doing?
Very well, thank you, Madam Chair.
Great. So would you just like to, anything you want to kind of say leading into this?
Absolutely, thank you. The Climate Emergency Action Plan status update is paper that was the Climate Committee requested a year ago when we last adopted changes to it, and what we've done is gone through and just reported in the attached schedule what's happened with each of those actions. There's been good progress on the organisational plan, somewhat slower on the regional plan due to the nature of the actions. We're not proposing to update the actual text of the plan now because that would need to go through council, and the changes are fairly minor. It's probably not council worthy at the moment, but it is important to note there are a few minor details which are misaligned now with the council plans. For example, electric bus fleet by 2035, now it's 2038. We wanted to highlight the plans and the role that they've played over the years and initiate a discussion about are they still the most appropriate kind of strategic framework for our climate emergency response. There's a couple of things to consider here. One is that the organisational plan is slowly being supplanted. We have an organisational emissions management and reduction plan, which covers off a lot of the actions in one of the plans and more. It's a much more detailed document. It also takes longer to read because it's not one page. However, it is more detailed, and we adopted that as it was considered best practice by the local government funding agency and a requirement of their climate action loans. So we put that in place. And also you'll be hearing in the paper afterwards from Melanie Bart about work on organisational risk reduction and the organisational climate adaptation plan. So once those two things are in place, then we really do have a double up around our action plans. However, you might think that the idea of a short, sharp template plan has passed its use-by date, but I note on the 4th of September, the Prime Minister of Spain, Pedro Sanchez, announced Spain's 10-point climate emergency action plan, their strategy for resilience, noting there can be no more time for excuses or pauses. Now is the time to accelerate the ecological transition. So it's still very clear outlining of the things that we're going to do to change things up, to accelerate, still has some currency. I'd also just like to acknowledge the contribution of my colleague Suze Keith in writing this paper. She is on leave and not able to present, but she did an awful lot of work on this. Thank you.
So question from Councillor Connolly.
Morena, thank you very much for this paper. I guess the statistic that I was looking to see but didn't see was given we're 20 years away from our climate positive goal, are we going to get there on the current trajectory? And I guess in particular, obviously you talk a lot in this paper about how we've pushed out our bus fleet electrification, and that's going to negatively contribute to our ability to be able to achieve that goal. But I'm also concerned about our parks plan and our replanting goals, especially as I guess there've been some backward moves in that space as well. So if you could just tell us overall how we're going on achieving the goal and how those two, or whether those two are the biggest contributors to us, biggest risk of us not achieving that goal, or whether there's something else that you think is more important.
Through you, Madam Chair. So we've done that analysis recently, in fact. So with the bus fleet electrification, it's critical to achieving our two headline targets for 2040 and 2045. So that must happen if we are to achieve those, and a lot of other things. For example, the Energy Transformation Initiative, having zero emissions electricity is critical as well. And with regards to regional parks, we did some analysis just in the last month, actually, regarding the rate of reforestation in regional parks, and we found that that we could reduce it a bit, and still make the target for 2045 without too much trouble. So, but if we reduced it too much, then it just completely disappeared out of sight. So, I mean, that information was put forward, and it's part of those considerations. Yeah.
Councillor Duffy.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. On the Energy Transformation Initiative, which you just mentioned, Jake, as one of our critical ones, the paper talks about that Greater Wellington has insufficient land holdings to host sufficient generation to meet the whatever megawatts. And yet, so are we only looking for land that will do all of it, or there must be some land that can contribute some of that energy transformation? So is it an all or nothing, or can it be a cumulative contributions towards that?
Through you, Madam Chair. So just to clarify, when we say insufficient land holdings, we're talking about solar farms. The potential for wind across regional parks is very large, hundreds of megawatts. But we took a strategic approach to that, in that we wouldn't lead those developments, and they're very much at the whims of a lot of forces that we could not control, consenting being one, and the participation of the wind energy companies being interested in doing it. So the focus has really been on solar, because that's something that is much lower risk and faster to deploy, and very much something which is implementable by council. And regarding those land holdings, we're talking about mostly flat land that is near the electricity network. So those land holdings include some flood protection land in the Wairarapa, which is protected by stop banks, also land held for reservoirs at Pakuratahi, and the likes of Goldens Valley, which was newly acquired. And we're looking at those in some detail, and generally speaking, all of those are possibilities, but they're dependent on other decisions being made. So it makes it a little bit difficult to bank on those as yet. It's not like there are competing priorities for the use of the land and other factors, then all of that needs to be taken into consideration. However, if all of those things came through, all three of those spots, then we would have maybe a quarter to a third of what we needed to meet the energy transformation initiative's goals. So when we say the land holdings is insufficient, that is what we mean.
And a secondary question, in terms of the land that's held for other purposes and therefore is on the surface looks like it wouldn't be suitable to host electricity generation, there must be some areas around, like in our regional parks, where while it's held for other purposes, there may be a public appetite to broaden the purposes and allow, a paddock in Queen Elizabeth Park or one in Belmont or somewhere up in Kaitoki to host solar panels. So is that a sort of a complete door closed because they're held for other purposes, or can we explore those opportunities and the public appetites for it through master planning and the Toitū Te Whenua actions?
Through you, Madam Chair, it could be explored. My experience with I don't know enough of the details to be sure how prohibitive it is. I know that certainly on dockland it's very, very difficult to get consent or permission, actually a concession to do renewable energy. So that may be an issue for Queen Elizabeth Park, but I'm honestly not sure. But if we broadened, it is to do with the purposes of the park, which are embedded in Toitū Te Whenua, and if those issues were discussed and the public had comfort, then perhaps it would be possible. Yeah, but it's not currently not something we're actively investigating.
Is that all you'd like to you ask anything else, Councillor Duffy? You're welcome to.
Okay, thank you. I do have one other question on a completely different topic. Centreport was exploring ship-to-shore power so cruise ships and so on that are berthed can use local renewable electricity rather than run their engines. Where are we at with that investigation?
Unfortunately, I'm not up to speed exactly where they're at. I know that to cold iron a ship, they need megawatts of power, and that there are electricity supply constraints that make that difficult.
Thank you. Nigel.
Thanks. I can just add to that slightly, Councillor Duthie. It is still being investigated. As was just mentioned, the volume of electricity that we required is actually really quite large. So where that comes from and how it's generated and how it comes into the Centreport land is quite complex, but it's still something that's been looked at, along with their whole renewable energy generation and how that links with the stadium, potentially solar power and such like. So there's a broader energy discussion going on that Centreport is still very much involved in and very much leading, but that particular question hasn't been resolved.
Cool, thank you. Has anybody else got any questions? Okay, just want to give a comment that yesterday regional council staff and with some KCDC, with some Te Atiawa, and with students from 2 schools in Waikanai, we all planted 2,000 plants along the Waikanai River and fed probably about 800 sausages on the sizzle. Yep, went down pretty well. And it was a really cool day. So I'm just thinking that I think the staff loved it as much as the kids. And yeah, it was just one of those sort of experiences where you think about, well, what's going in terms of the planting, but actually that experience and that learning for those students about, you know, how we actually do our business. It was a really wonderful experience. So congrats to the staff for organising that. It was very, very successful and very heartening. And so that's part of the 2,000 trees that's going in this year, plus lots more along the Waikano River and everywhere in our rohi. So we have 2 recommendations on page 9 there. Who would like to move those? Councillor Connolly move and Councillor Nash to second. Any debate? No. Okay. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against? Motions are carried. Thank you. Thanks very much, Jake. Now we'll move on to item number 7. 6. No panic. Just relax. Morena.
Morena, thank you.
So do you want to introduce your paper and present, and how would you like to roll?
Yeah, I guess I will take the paper as read and can take questions.
Councillor Nash.
Kia ora, Chair. Kia ora, everyone. Thank you for this paper. Have other councils done these risk assessments?
Through you, Madam Chair. So some councils, they have to do TCFD disclosure, such as Auckland. I think that's the only council that has to do it. Other councils, they have done risk assessments, which are not mandatory. I know that Cardston and South Wairarapa District Councils, they have done it because I was the one doing it for them. And other councils, they are also working on it, but not many of them.
I mean, it's a very impressive paper. Have we discussed it with our insurers? Or are they aware that we are undertaking it?
Through you, Madam Chair. So while developing this risk assessment, I have discussed quite a lot with our risk manager, Jacob Boyce. But so he is discussing with insurance, but I'm not sure if he discussed this matter exactly.
I'm sure they'll be looking at it. And I wondered also, a lot of the risks that are identified and the mitigation measures for them relate to not just to us, but to our partners, right? So territorial authorities, the water entity, Kiwi Rail, NZTA, Remo, and I wondered how much those partners have been involved with developing the risk assessment and developing measures that we'll be taking, because some of the measures we can take ourselves, but some will require those partners to take the measures specifically, and also to seek funding for the measures that might be required. But I wonder how we sort of bring all that together.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. So while doing the risk assessment, we've included a lot of subject matter experts in the organization, not so much externally, and it was only a risk assessment. So the OCAP, which is the Organizational Climate Adaptation Plan, is underway, and that's when we will have to discuss a lot more. But being organizational documents, both of them, we are focusing on our own risk, as you've seen, and also on what we can do ourselves. But of course, there's discussion happening with external parties.
Sorry to keep going on that, but do we know does Kiwi Rail have their own risk assessment like this?
Through you, Madam Chair, I wouldn't be able to say, sorry.
Okay. Maybe someone in the organisation can look into whether partner organisations, I'm thinking the water entity, obviously it's just setting up, but so maybe it'll do one of these at some point. But where there are specific intersections between our work and the work of partners in terms of water, in terms of public transport, I think it'd be good to know whether those partner organisations are doing a similar exercise and aligning on the mitigation measures.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you. In my role as chair of Wairarapa Engineering Lifelines Association, we've done a major risk assessment of all infrastructure over Wairarapa, and that does include Kiwi Rail and Powerco. I'm pretty sure Wellington Lifelines are doing the same thing, so it may not be quite as detailed as this for an individual organisation, but they must have had the information to feed into our overall framework. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah, Councillor Connolly has a question.
Actually, I have a comment and a question, if you'll allow me, Madam Chair. So my comment is around, I guess, the alignment of this work with the work of FRAC. And it's not really a positive comment. I guess the number of us around the table have been trying to get FRAC to broaden its scope and look beyond financial control risks. And we've achieved that to a certain extent. But the fact that in the current timeframe, there are multiple extreme risks identified as part of this that don't appear on our current risk ratings is extremely concerning. And so I guess as an outcome of that, we have one more FRAC committee before the end of the year on the 30th of this month. I was wondering if I could propose a motion which went along the lines of essentially we request the chair to write to the chair of FRAC, passing on the information in this organisational climate risk assessment and asking for FRAC to consider the implications of those extreme risks. I'm just, the fact that FRAC hasn't identified those risks is massively problematic, and we need to address it at an organisational risk perspective.
You could write a letter about daring. Yeah, he's good.
He's really good.
Is everyone supportive of that?
Yeah, sounds good.
I mean, clearly there won't be time to action it in this triennium, but at least if a letter's been written and it's made it onto the FRAC agenda, it won't be. It will be there for the new triennium.
Yeah, good idea.
My question is around. This is a really broad question. You're not going to have a straight answer for me. I appreciate that, but there's comments in here about how our current kind of organisational structure is not appropriate for addressing some of the climate risks. But that wasn't actually fleshed out in the document as far as I could see. And I'm just wondering, whilst that kind of leads one to concluding that we need centralised decision making so that we can make top-down decisions across the whole region. But I guess I've seen action in the climate space that suggests that bottom-up contributions are actually more successful. So what does that statement mean? And what are the ideal structures for progressing climate change mitigations?
Through you, Madam Chair. So I'm guessing you're speaking about the institutional arrangement not being fit for purpose. So it is a risk that we are facing indeed. And what it means is that currently, because of all the time frame being very different on decision making for local government, central government too, and the issue of climate change, as there is a misalignment. So that's why we wanted to really highlight this fact when it comes to developing measures to mitigate this risk. Right now, I do not have an answer. Let's be clear. And that's all the jobs. That's all the work I have to do on the OCAP, the Organizational Climate Adaptation Plan, to look into best practices, what is being done across the country, maybe trying to also look at what's happening elsewhere and trying to identify ways to mitigate this risk as much as we can. But it is important to understand that there is this risk and to acknowledge it. So that's why it's part of it.
Have you got something? Oh, nice.
Is it consider the implications, or is it something about incorporate some of the findings into the risk? Like, if you consider them, the implications, it's not really an outcome. Sorry to be. I think it's an incorporated, or I think you need a stronger, include the risks identified in this report in FRAC.
What about to address the extreme risks identified in this report through FRAC reporting structures? Yeah,
Through the FRAC work program.
Just in relation to that, one of the discussions that we have had of recent times is that it may well be that the finance and the risk and the assurance or audit may be quite separate, and I think the focus of the risk should actually be a real focus on the total organisation, just not money. And so I just put that into the room. And I totally support the recommendation as it stands at the moment.
So is that saying you're seconding it?
Sorry?
Are you seconding it? That's great. That's really helpful. So good timing, because then, as at the start of the new term, all this can be considered in whatever the structure might be. Okay, who would like to speak to?
We finished question? No.
Okay, no, we haven't finished. We'll go back to questions. Councillor Saw, have you got one?
Yes, I do. Thank you. Thank you for this report. And maybe another ponderous question, sort of picking up from Councillors Nash and Connolly, is while we've clearly identified the risk and where they sit in our organisation, I'm curious to know where this goes in terms of how we mitigate and take the actions, because sometimes our various work programs across Greater Wellington possibly don't focus on the catastrophic, or the things that are going from amber to red. So where is that piece of work where, say, when we are looking at business cases for particular projects, or when we're looking at forthcoming annual plan or long-term plan adjustments to get the rates number down, that we understand what those decisions will impact?
Through you, Madam Chair. So that's the exact thing we're trying to achieve with the ORCAP, the Climate Adaptation Plan. So briefly, what we're going to do with this project is to identify what is currently being done by Greater Wellington, because a lot is being done on all those risks we've mentioned in the OCRA. And from there, moving forward, identifying gaps, understanding how much they mitigate those risks and how much is left, how much risk is left. So do we need to close the gaps? Yes. Or if there is gaps, we need to close them. How do we close them? And then from there, we will be able to write business cases and put them into long-term plan, possibly to attract resources where it's needed to mitigate all the risk identified.
I guess it sort of comes down to something that we've talked about a lot in this term of we're not very good at pricing the externalities. And so is that part of the work where we understand the cost of the savings we're trying to make, if that makes sense?
Through you, Madam Chair. So I guess that would that is not going to be part of the ORCAP. It's in a second stage, because the ORCAP will really be here to identify measures that are doable, and when it comes to costing, it's not going to be included.
But I guess our decisions always fundamentally come down to that. It's not
Yeah.
going to be like, oh yeah, we're just going to ratchet the rates up because it's a big risk. So I think the actions need to be set in the context of our operating environment. Yeah, and so I think there's naturally going to be a tension there, and I just want to raise it of how do we as an organisation address that very real tension. And what are the actions that we need to take? Is it about socialising the message? Is it about having it in our reporting? Is it about having some sort of matrix that prices out these risks? I guess that's your guys' job.
I can add to that through the annual plan process we're working through at the moment and will be coming to council with later this year, these are the sorts of things, the risks associated with any decisions that get taken in terms of cost cutting or reductions, that this sort of work, the information from this will be a lens that gets put on that and provided alongside other implications to the decision making. So we are looking to make sure that you do have that full picture for decision making that you do.
And I guess within that, if you've got ones that are in that amber and red, you're probably going to want to highlight those further than just one of the sections at the end of the paper. That's all.
Yeah, look, just to keep, there's a really good point that's been raised here by the councillor, I think, for the annual plan, and it will actually go into the long-term plan as well, because there's really two horizons to the work we're talking about now. One is actually coming back with an annual plan with a suite of options around rates for a new council that the new council debate and come to some conclusion over. That will be a little bit more binary in some of the questions you're asking about, as opposed to when we then get to the long-term plan and how we address the decisions made around the annual plan and trade-offs in that, and then actually start to chart a new 3-year/10-year program of work for the organisation. And that's when I think you'll see a lot more information, the way that you're looking for it around the externalities, how we price things in that aren't necessarily a binary rate number, and that will absolutely be in the long-term plan. You'll see some of that for the annual plan, but a lot more of the long-term plan, because that's where obviously the biggest strategic decisions will be made and going into the future. So it's a very good question.
Any other questions? Online? No? All good? Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Right. And now we'll go to our last. Oh, right. Thank you. So any debate? I think we don't need to debate. We will agree. In that case, I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against, the motion is carried. Thank you. Now, item number 7. Jake, you on your own again? You're lovely. Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This paper was requested, I think, by you, regarding just to summarise everything that the Climate Committee has done over the triennium, the past 5 meetings of the Climate Committee. As you might know, the frequency dropped from 4 times a year to twice a year for this triennium. So essentially, all the highlights are documented there. The committee considered targets, it considered LCAF applications, it considered went through an iterative process with the climate emergency action plans in relation to informing the LTP. So those were the big items that came through committee that influenced the strategy of council in relation to climate. Also approved LCAF funding, in particular the LED lighting project at Stadium, which is essentially complete, and already their electricity bills have gone down substantially, and that's with only the project even being partially completed during the last financial year. So they're thrilled to bits, from what I can tell, about the results of that initiative. The next steps we've just highlighted that there are certain live issues for the new council to consider through whatever committee structure it decides upon. Those include the Porirua Citizens Assembly on Climate, the outcomes of the investigations we're doing for the Energy Transformation Initiative, and the work in relation to adaptation, which is being led by the Leadership Committee, but with a lot of input from ourselves. Yes, so otherwise I'll take the paper as read and happy to answer questions.
Excellent, thank you very much. Anybody like to got a question? No? Online? No, it's just actually really satisfying to see it all the reminder of actually what we've all been doing in this committee. So no questions. That's great. That means the paper covered everything. So thank you very much for that. Good 3 year. Oh, here's Councillor Kirkland. Oh, okay. We're just about to finish the 7th item, Councillor. And do you have any questions on this last item around the Climate Committee training and review? Okay. Right. Well, thank you very much for the paper and pulling it all together, because I think it's a timely kind of to have, as they have that reminder for us, and then also for looking forward for the new training, the work that gets done in this context and how that all might shape up. Excellent. So thank you very much for that. I just wonder if before we close up, as part of the closing up, does anybody want to give any closing reflections, because we've done the business of this committee? I just want to thank everybody for their contributions to the Climate Committee in this training, and particularly to Councillor Nash, who is retiring. Thank you for your work as the chair in the first term, which set us up really nicely for the focus we've had in this term, because a lot of it was actually things that were in place and we just carried on. It was really cool. So really encouraging that, we've got a lot of good content that's been coming through here, and very much appreciate the work of the team, Jake, and those who are here. Thank you so much for your contribution there. This is the topic that is dear to everybody's heart around here. So whether we're doing environmental work or public transport work, this is the kind of at the heart of all that concern, isn't it? So thank you so much. And can I ask Councillor Saw to close with a karakia? Thank you.
Nā te kura taio, tēnei kura nui, tēnei kura roa. Kia horahia te Māori ora ki runga I te mata o te whenua. Ka rongo te pō, ka rongo te ao. Whiti, whiti tau mai te Māori, haumi e, hui e, tai ki e.
Let's do a morning tea break. Let's have about a 20-minute one, so that 10:30 could be the workshop start of though. No, not our one, the next, the